who can be sort of elders to boys. And so they're not just looking at one particular role model, but many. And you know, one of the things when Michelle and I first started dating and I'd go over to your guys' house, one of the things I loved was just, you know, seeing all your uncles and your cousins. And there were a bunch of different kinds of men. You know, there were men that were kind of soft-spoken, and then there were men that were loud, and there were men who were engineers, and then there were men who were you know, police officers, or they drove, you know, a jitney cab. Yeah. Right. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of times boys need is not just exposure to one guy.
One dad.
No matter how good the dad
is. He can't be everything.
But he act like he's saying something revolutionary. Nobody would ever argue that young boys don't need a village of men. But what he about to get to is the bull part of it.
Why she's I'm sorry, Pat. Go ahead.
Because I'm with you. Why is she coaching him? Two, why is he phrasing it like that? He doesn't just need access to one dad. Now, we went from talking about having a multitude of role models to now having a multitude of dads.
Well, he didn't say the one dad. He said one man. She said one dad.
Right.
And he repeated what she said.
Coaching. Yeah. So
no, you don't need that.
You need one dad. You do need a multitude of male role models. But here's the thing, like you said, Joe, that's not revolutionary. Like, everybody need multiple role models.
Duh.
That's not specific. I ain't met a woman or boy or anything, period, that's like, I only want my son to be exposed to D-boys. I've never met that person. So the statement is totally unneeded.
I mean, if we're gonna continue to repeat, it takes a village. Duh.
But now, Joe, because apparently everybody in the village do the same thing, so they need to be exposed to other villages. Like, what are you talking about?
But also, it's well. Let's let them keep talking.
Can't be everything, and that boy may need somebody to give the boy some perspective on the dad.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
One of the most valuable things I learned as a guy was I had a gay professor in college at a time when openly gay folks still weren't out of line, who became one of my favorite professors and was a great guy and would call me out when I started saying stuff that was ignorant. You need that to show empathy and kindness. And by the way, you need that person in your friend group so that
I think my mother could teach me empathy and kindness, but I also think my father and the other masculine men around me could also teach me empathy and kindness. Because if I'm in this village, and I get it, you got the single parent households, but we talk about a village, so the village should consist of men and women. So shouldn't women be able to teach that young boy empathy and kindness, and also those men? Because it's almost as if, because early in the conversation that they're framing it as if every man is a robot and we all operate as a robot. Like, because they just got through saying that there was a plethora of different types and personalities of men within the Robinson family. Then you come back to this with this stagnant definition, with pushing it kind of like all men are robots. Well, no, I mean, so if I'm a masculine,
not a monolith.
Man, but if I'm a masculine man, I don't have empathy and kindness. That's only reserved for men who are more feminine. That's bull.
Yeah. Well, and this is the viral part that's been up all over the place.
But we needed the whole context.
No. We got it.
I'm happy for the context.
Yeah. The leading into this, but it's kind of hard for a person who's not that to project what that's supposed to be you know, because the things he's describing doesn't fall under the masculine energies. You know, we need balance, of course. But if you want somebody to, like you said, Joe, if you want somebody to teach you those things, then perhaps, you know, I mean, maybe that's who taught him empathy in his life, which would really speak to his upbringing in terms of what happened in his household. But to say that that's what's needed, I think empathy is needed in the world in regards of
but
how you're coming up. But I don't think it needs to be specifically, you know, geared to, you know, a particular aspect of a community that
I had crackheads teach me how to be handy, but I'd never go out in a large portion tell young black men, you need crackheads in your life to teach you how to be handy. No, that was specific to my experience, but that's not where you should go learn how to be handy. Like, come on.
yeah.
Go ahead, PC.
No. You know, because it's kind of, this is in a more in a way that wouldn't get Joe demonetized. This would be a great conversation to have. But in terms of some of those things, some things that probably need to be said about this, I have an issue with this being projected, because, like we said, when the Obamas talk, no matter what happens, the majority of the people they're talking to or projecting to are black people.
Right.
So why is this the consistent message projected towards black people and specifically black boys?
I tell you why.
What?
Masculinity, specifically black masculinity, is not good enough. It's under attack, and they want to be able to shift it and change it to make men softer and more women-like.
Well, so let me play devil's advocate for a second. Maybe he wasn't saying you need a gay man. You just need a man that can teach you, that can call you out on your bull and teach you empathy. But for him, that man just so happened to be gay. Would that change things if we looked at it through that lens?
But the idea is, so that's the, out of all the men you ever met in your life, that's the only man who displayed or could teach empathy. And
now we gotta think about his life though. That might be true for him.
Yeah,
I mean, but once again, going back to my example. So should I go around telling encouraging young boys to go seek out crackheads for handy?
Well, no, that's not what I'm saying.
The answer is no, right?
No, so that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you, Joe, were saying I had a man teach me how to be handy, he was a crackhead. But you need somebody to teach you how to be handy. You wouldn't necessarily be telling people to go find a crackhead, but you would tell people to go find somebody that teach you to be handy.
But I don't have to tell them that the person who taught me was a crackhead. I could just say, hey, men taught me how to be handy. Go find handy men to teach you how to be handy.
Well, and that's why I asked the question. If we looked at it through that lens and tried to operate as if Obama is black, and we're going to give him a good faith view of what he's saying. Does it? Now I get it and I understand it and I agree with it. Why bring up the gayness at all? Like a man taught you, called you on your bull and taught you how to be empathetic and show kindness. Why did you need him to be gay? Like, why did that need to be a part of the story? But I'm just asking, does that view change the conversation?
Not for me.
Well, I'm gonna tell it slightly, if only, but only if that's just what he said. Now, adding the other part changes the whole dynamic because it gives the impression that only gay men can teach empathy and sympathy to young males. And I don't think that's true at all. I think we've all had moments in our lives where we've taught empathy and, empathetic and sympathetic concepts to young males, to young boys. In fact, that's sort of like the role we sort of play in the balance, because a lot of the situations, the households that these young boys come from, they don't get that because that whole concept around universal love, we all know that's not true. You know, and so they don't get that. A lot of times they come up in harsh environments that show them no empathy whatsoever, and which leads to what was a critical factor in terms of how then they see their relationships with the opposite sex, and they have no empathy for the women they come in contact with. And I'm talking about the heterosexual males that they come in contact with, because they never received that same care from that particular parent. There's a way to have this conversation, and have this conversation in a way where we can say that the village is needed. And instead of trying to say we need, all these terms, excuse me, that allege certain things. So when you say they need two dads, well, two dads, that's a homosexual parenting relationship. Then you say, then right behind that, you follow that up with, well, I believe all boys need a guy like my professor, who happened to be gay,
right?
Who held me accountable. Well, I think all people need to be around people that hold them accountable. Period. It don't
right.
So if they happen to be gay, that's like a sort of subset. That's not the headline. That shouldn't be the headline, because I don't want it to come off as if we're attacking the man just because of his chosen sexuality. No. We're looking at the way it was described, because, like I said, when the Obamas talk, they're very well crafted, very well thought out. They don't haphazardly speak. Barack Obama is a very measured man with his words. So when they speak, they sort of want to interject certain things into the conversations, and it has ripple effect. Look, we're talking about it right now. Imagine how many other people are saying who don't have the chutzpah to challenge it, but are saying, you know what? Imagine how many women in single parent households right now who were part of the 92% are looking at this saying that sounds like a good idea. Like the same group that grew up dating their entire lives, and then Steve Harvey comes out with a book, Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man. And next thing you know, everybody's adopting these same core principles that he just described in the book. That's like, you don't have a mind. Many people don't have a mind of their own. So
power of influence.
Like the Milgram experiment all over again, in which when you think not just influence, when you think people in authority are talking to you,
right,
the majority of society is inclined to follow without question.
Well, so I tell this all the time. So working at HIV/AIDS, when I first started working, I learned about the earwax test, right? Because this is an example, like what you're saying, of the influence of authority figures, beloved authority figures that the Obamas are for the Black Democrats, right? So in the country, they teach young boys that if you want to test and see if a girl got HIV, this is what you do. You dig in your ear and you get earwax. And you stick it inside the vagina. If she jumps, she has it. And if she doesn't jump, she's good, right? So, and so you had generations of young boys believing that because of the men in their lives who were authority figures who told them this, because somebody in their life who was an authority figure told them that. So it got passed down. So these false narratives are being spread out among our people, because it's like, to answer the Pat question, like, nah, I mean, I hear you being the devil's advocate, but thinking about the total history of Obama and this relationship to that community, nah, he know what he doing.
Yeah, and I agree that Obama is very measured. I do think that I agree with PC. Obama don't just say things. Now, I do think sometimes because he is not, and you can light me up for this all y'all want, Obama ain't really a part of the Black American community.
He's not. Well, and I do agree that he's measured, but
that's what I'm getting to is because he's not a part of, he's not really connected to the community foundationally. Sometimes his measurement be off. And we saw that when he came out and tried to chastise us at the election. That didn't go as planned. So, I think in a lot of cases, he measuring things like his ruler is his wife. Like, and I've been saying it for years.
His wife and Craig.
His wife has his black card and his balls in her purse. And if that works for him and her, that's fine. Great. I ain't got no problem with it. It ain't my black card and it ain't my balls. So I'm not even being critical of it. But I did want to present that because listening to it, I can hear people saying, y'all are misunderstanding what he's saying. He's not saying you need a gay man. That's why I was like, all right, let's be devil's advocate and let's go ahead and address that criticism right during the show.
Well, just encourage men to teach young boys kindness and empathy. You could have said that he could have gave that example through just the lens of a regular man, of a masculine man. He went out of his way to give that lens.
Well, once again, we get to a place where we're trying to patch up a leaky ship, and we're doing it at sea during the worst storms of the season. We have to make sure that the ship is, seaworthy before it leaves port. The problem is in our for lack of a better term, our community, we're not doing that.
We ain't got no wood to build the ships.
Well, there's plenty of wood going around, obviously, but
not the wood to build the ships, though.
To build the passengers.
There you go. Go.
Because I can't bypass the origin story. So we talk about criminals, but we don't talk. We talk. It's like the Frankenstein monster. Just on the surface, just on the face, is the villain. But we don't talk about the Dr. Frankensteins
who created it,
who create the villain,
programmed it,
create them, haphazardly bypass every moral law, moral concepts to create them. But now the village is looking to destroy Frankenstein. But if nobody is breaking the mold that creates Frankenstein, the Frankenstein monsters, then we're going to consistently be in this. And we've faced this generational curse for decades now. Black people were the most married family going into 1956.
Talk about it.
Over 90% of Black families were married. Even if all the children didn't come from the same parents, the households were complete. And at that particular time, there was that concept of family, and it was not based on happiness. It wasn't based on whether or not I was in the mood. It was based on duty. It was based on we have a duty. And when that man walked into that house, he became daddy. I know plenty of people who grew up who are my elders, who spoke on the fact that, man, I don't care where such and such, that was my father right there. And so he actually had the respect that came with, that made him want to come home to another man's children. The title of stepfather wasn't even, it was just in the language only, because in theory, he was the father of the house. So we keep bypassing all of those things to get to this place. So now we have to, make men who are not engaged in any of the proclivities, men who these women are not sexually attracted to, have no interest whatsoever in in intimacy with, who these men may not even have been chosen coming up. It's a hard sell to tell them that you have to now come home and do your part. When, as we said before, these men have never truly been shown love in their community.